if you're looking for a pure white fondant recipe that is perfect for all weather types, then this video is definitely for you. So let's get right into it. This is the standard recipe I use. However, in this video I'm going to be making 1.5 kg fondant. Okay, I used it to cover a size 8 cake, which is 8 inches in diameter and 9 inches tall. So that was why I used 1.5 kg. So the first step, of course, is to sift our icing sugar. In my previous videos, I've talked about how that sifting your icing sugar is not necessarily to remove any form of chaff, but because the processed sugar tends to form into hard balls while it is packaged, and so we need to sift it to make sure we have a fine powdery sugar. So that is why I'm sifting here. And definitely, to make fondant that is smooth, you need a finely sifted sugar. You cannot afford to start having lumps in your final product of fondant. So as I was saying, if you are trying to decorate a cake, maybe like a 2-layered size 8 cake or size 6 cake, something that is not too big and something that doesn't really require so much detail, you can use the 500-gram recipe. But if you're making a cake where it's a fondant design and there are so many details you need to create with that particular fondant, then you definitely need much more fondant. And also, if the cake is bigger in size, you need much more fondant. And so because the cake I was working on here is quite big, and also it had so much detail with fondant work, and so I needed more fondant. That was why I used 1.5 kg. So now back to the recipe. I used 4.5 teaspoons of CMC powder. So for my glucose syrup, I used 5 tablespoons. I was supposed to use 4.5, but I just decided to use 5. If you followed the recipe that I outlined earlier in the video, you would understand what I mean. And so here I'm just measuring out my water. I like to use hot water so that it will be quicker for me to dilute my glucose syrup. You can use normal water as well, or you can do this over a double boiler so that your glucose syrup will melt quicker. However, you do need to dilute and melt your glucose syrup before incorporating it into your icing sugar. So another thing I would like to highlight is the tablespoon you use to measure your glucose syrup is the regular tablespoon for eating. Do not use the tablespoon with the measuring cup set. Although you can do that, I just recommend that you use the regular eating tablespoon as seen in this video. So now, as I am done measuring my glucose syrup, I am going to just mix and stir till it completely mixes in and dilutes with the water that I measured earlier. If you'll be adding any form of essence or extract, this is the point where you add it into your glucose mix. So now that that is done, we're going to add in our egg whites and then our glucose mix. So for the glucose mix, I mixed it in bits, but best believe I actually used the entire mixture. So I just mixed it in bits. So what you want to do is just create a well in the middle of your icing sugar. You can do this in a mixing bowl. I just prefer to do this on my work table. So you make a well, pour in your wet ingredients and start mixing in gradually till everything is well combined and incorporated. Okay, if you do not want to make such a huge mess, and especially if this is your first time of making fondant, I advise you mix it in a bowl and then transfer it to your work table to knead. So just watch the video and see how it's done. So this fondant recipe came about because of the hot weather where I live here in Nigeria. I live in Lagos, and the weather can be really hot sometimes, and so I used to use gelatin fondant, but I noticed at some point that it would tragically fail during the hot weather. There was a time I actually made a wedding cake for someone and kept the cake just overnight, and this fondant melted because of the heat in Lagos that period. And so it came about me trying to look for an alternative, and instead of using gelatin, I decided to do egg fondant. Trust me, the first time I made this fondant, it was solid, and it was in the same hot weather. This cake stayed for 2 days straight. It didn't melt. The fondant didn't melt. As a matter of fact, it did melt, but when it started melting was about the third day when I noticed that I sliced into the cake and then it had started melting from the inside, but the outside was still looking perfect. So that just tells you how that this is a really fail-proof fondant that you can use. Best for hot weather, even in the cold weather, much better. Harmattan period, the winter, wherever you are in the world, this fondant recipe is going to work for you perfectly, trust me. So once you incorporate all your icing sugar with your wet mix, you're going to have a dough like this. So you're just going to knead, okay? Because of the quantity I made, I had to break it into 3 parts, or rather I had to share it into 3 parts to knead much more effectively and much more easily because I have small hands, okay? So another thing to note is you need some extra icing sugar. As I mentioned on the recipe page, I stated that always have about 250 grams to 500 grams extra icing sugar that you would need to knead in while you're kneading your fondant. Now this is just for you to get the desired texture of fondant you're looking for. Some people like their fondant soft, some people like their fondant super hard and solid. So in order for you to get a hard and solid fondant, you need to add in more icing sugar. So it's always safe, to just have some extra icing sugar. For this 1.5 kg recipe, I used extra about 300 to 400 grams. I didn't use up to 500 grams icing sugar, and it gave me a perfect consistency to work with, okay? You do not want your fondant to be too dry. You want it to still be pliable, you want it to be pure white, and you want it to be easy to mold and hold its shape. You don't want a fondant that is too soft that it doesn't hold its shape, it melts easily, and rather than being white, it's kind of giving translucent. You don't want that. That tells you that your icing sugar is not enough. So you want to put enough icing sugar for your fondant to be pliable enough to hold its shape and to be white, okay? So here I'm kneading the first part of 3 that I cut my fondant, and I'm just going to keep doing this till everything is well incorporated. So while that is going on, I would love to use this opportunity to let you know that in the month of December 2024, from the 1st to the 25th, I'm going to be posting 25 different recipes for you to share with your loved ones this Christmas season. I'm going to be baking, I'm going to be cooking, I'm going to also tell stories behind each recipe that I will be sharing. All the recipes I'll be sharing are staple recipes from my childhood that my family and I absolutely enjoy every holiday season. And so I'm going to be sharing with you 25 of those recipes this Christmas, okay? So you guys stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel, share my videos to your loved ones, turn on your notifications so that you'll be the first person to see my posts once I upload them. So now back to our fondant. You can see that it's already coming together nicely, it's already molding nicely, and I can literally form a log. It's holding its shape, it's white, it's pliable, and so this is the perfect recipe, guys. Make sure you try this recipe. Let me know what you think. Share this video to your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.